All right. Well, I mean, we're jumping right into this. So, Joker, Folie à Deux, directed by Todd Phillips, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, Brendan Gleeson. And the plot synopsis is struggling with his dual identity, failed comedian Arthur Fleck meets the love of his life, Harley Quinn, while incarcerated at Arkham State Hospital. What did you guys think of Joker, Folie à Deux?
Now let me jump in. Let me jump in before people think I'm influenced by what
Well,
you guys
okay,
have to
Reed,
say.
first of all,
Huh?
did you said you hadn't seen the original. Did you watch it or no?
I began watching it after I saw Folie à Deux, but I mean, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, so I only watched like 10 minutes of it.
Okay, so no.
Of the first one. Yeah, so yeah, I going into this movie, I was expecting it to be bad. I turned out loving it because you can't argue that the film is shot very nicely. Cinematography, Todd Phillips knows where to put the camera.
You can't argue that?
You cannot. This film is beautiful to look at.
You can't argue that it's shot beautifully.
That it's not shot beautifully. No, okay. No. Anyways, it's shot beautifully. I'm not really a fan of Joaquin Phoenix or Lady Gaga, but I thought they were excellent in this. And as a musical, I even appreciated the song selection. I really would have loved to hear Tears of a Clown by Smokey Robinson, but I guess that song would have been too upbeat. I mean, the musical numbers are pretty low key. I mean, there's nothing flashy about them with people flying in the air or anything like that. But I really liked it. And the normal complaints people have about musicals, about the music numbers not being like natural to the film or whatever. Like, I didn't have any problem with people just breaking out into song. I mean, you could argue that it is realistic, although perhaps in real life people will not sing the whole song. But I thought it was okay.
Did you know going in that it was a musical?
I think I did, although I did not realize, because Lady Gaga was in it. I didn't realize Joaquin Phoenix would be singing that much. But you can analyze this film as a look at the entertainment business and how it's like a prison. And I mean, I think people did the analogy with the first film about the mental illness in the news. But then recently we got this thing about Chappelle Rowan complaining about her feelings about the whole fame social media thing. And you can picture like the Joker going through the exact same thing. And the idea, like when I'm trying to think of not to spoil the movie, but there's like when in prisons when you have escape sequences and they shine the spotlight down to try to find the people escaping. Like you can make an analogy of that being like the spotlight of show business on entertainers.
Getting pretty deep here, Reed.
I'm trying to think of what else I can say about the film. People have talked about the ending. And I guess we're having a spoiler segment.
Yeah, I think so.
Actually, I spoiled it myself because I didn't think I was going to watch the film until maybe a couple of years from now. Someone on Discord in the spoiler section that mentioned the end of the film, and so I knew what was coming. I didn't have a problem with it.
Didn't have a problem with it, but did you like it, or was it just kind of
I like it as an end of a film. Like if I hadn't known, it probably would have shocked me if I had not known that was the end of the film, and I'd just seen it. Because if Frank says that he was expecting the film to end that way, I'd be really surprised. Uh, and I thought, yeah, the ending was just so appropriate. I thought. I mean, maybe the way it ended. I mean, and how it ended, people might disagree with, but the way it was shot, I think, was well done. Uh, I I'll pass it on to someone else for now, but I'll probably think of something else I liked about the film.
Okay. Frank?
I am kind of just middle of the road on this one. I really enjoy Joker. I rewatched it last week, and I think I liked it a bit less on a rewatch. I think a third rewatch, but I still think the cinematography is fantastic and the score. And I was wrong at the end of last week's show. Both were returning for Folie à Deux. And I just feel like it's a really thin premise stretched out to 2 hours and 20 minutes. And if you're really going to enjoy it, I think you have to like the musical numbers. And I have no reverence for that music at all. Like, I don't like the songs. They're not songs I'm a fan of. I liked the Joker song. I thought was that Joaquin performed. I liked that performance. That was my favorite musical number of the entire film. But the other ones I really didn't care for. I liked the way they looked. In particular, there was a couple shots at the end of the movie that I thought were very beautiful. But to me, the courtroom sequence is such a failure. Like, there's not really any satire or great dialogue in that. Like, I was like, oh, when I think of the Murray Hamilton show and the tension of that in the first Joker, I was like, oh, this trial is going to be very interesting with that Joker character on display. And I thought the trial was mostly a wet noodle for the most part. Like, it's pretty long and not that memorable to me. So I feel like they rushed this sequel out. I think there is some germs of like good ideas spread throughout it. Even the whole movie to me is kind of hanging on the trailer. I think there are moments of brilliance, like the lipstick on the glass and smiling to fill it. That is a very inventive shot that they're using a lot in the trailer. And the whole movie kind of feels like that to me. A couple of interesting ideas, but the entire movie does not sustain the ideas. And I like the idea of the ending, kind of like Reed. I just didn't think the movie earned it. It kind of came out of nowhere for me. And I feel like it could be something I appreciate more on a rewatch, but it was just okay for me. I was mostly disappointed. Even though I'd heard there's like a animated sequence at the beginning. I didn't necessarily love it. Again, like the idea of it, didn't think it was executed that well. And I don't think it really matches the other themes of the movie. The whole thing felt pretty disjointed to me.
I actually have a question about the animated sequence because I missed the first like 5 minutes. Like, is it just open straight to that, or is there some kind of like lead into it? Or
no, it just starts with like a Looney Tunes type intro.
Okay.
With the characters in the film.
And I actually like Lady Gaga. I'm not crazy about some of her previous performances. I thought this was one of her better ones. Although that's the other big problem for the movie for me. This is where I think it could be better on a rewatch. I did not feel this relationship necessarily, and maybe that's intended. Maybe we'll talk about that in spoiler. But I didn't feel that connection other than I know Harley Quinn and Joker are supposed to be a couple in previous Batman stuff. There was nothing that special about their connection. And I'm sure people would argue, well, that's the whole point. There is nothing special about their connection. It's about fame and other things. But it just didn't make watching it all that compelling. It's a little more interesting to think about in retrospect.
Jay?
It's about man's inhumanity to man.
Well, I loved it. I'm on Reed's side, weirdly enough.
Yeah. I win.
Reed wins, everybody. I think it's a way better movie than the first Joker. I like, musical stuff aside, this movie is so much darker, and I mean like truly dark. Like this is, and I get why maybe some people are not happy with that they thought maybe in Joker Folie à Deux it would start to pull in like your Batmans and your Commissioner Gordons and your whatever else, but this is not that.
It does kind of. Harvey Dent's in it.
Well, I mean, there are shared things with the Batman universe, but I don't think it's intended to interface with anything that is canon in the comics or the films currently. So on its own, as a study of someone with a certain mental psychosis and the idea of being torn between sad, and this obviously is like a bigger comment outside of the boundaries of the film, and I'll say immediately, I like what the film is doing within the boundaries of the film and what it is doing outside of the boundaries of the film. And anytime there's talk about, Joker, I think it's in the Sonny and Cher type sequence, which, I mean, has one of my favorite songs and probably the best Bee Gees song, To Love Somebody, which I thought was amazing. And the idea of, I don't think we're giving the audience what they want. And Arthur Fleck as a character being stuck in that space where he is wanting to live a normal life in many ways, but the draw and the appeal of Joker is forcing him into this darkness, and he can't escape from it. And it's just easier to give in to the darkness than it is to fight back and lay claim to your own personality and identity. And I thought that was thematically explored in a number of interesting ways throughout the film. It felt more mature than the first Joker movie. The musical numbers make sense in regards to the idea of these fantasies and the way that Arthur is lost in these moments. It reminded me of Natural Born Killers in many ways.
I guess I was born, naturally born bad.
The courtroom stuff, I don't disagree that the tension isn't necessarily the same as the end of the first Joker, but I thought all of this stuff, everything having to do with Arthur not being able to resist Joker due to the pressures of all of the people celebrating who Joker is, becoming this unwilling figurehead for this movement, I thought that landed way better in this film than it did in the first one. The musical numbers, I think, are intentionally scrappy, and the singing is all, they're real singing voices for better or worse. And that's the way to do it with this, because it's just these fantasies that Arthur is having. And it's always been about show business. So it makes sense to me that the musical numbers would be in this sort of classic Hollywood world. And I don't like every single song in it either, but I don't feel like when watching it, I'm not expected it's going to be like a DJ playing me songs I like.
I am.
It's just
well, that's how I tend to judge musicals. Like, do I remember the songs? Do I like the songs? I agree. I think within each performance, I had no problem with the voice and the singing of both actors. Although I did feel it a couple times. I could notice cuts to different takes of Joaquin or someone else that wasn't Joaquin singing some high parts in a couple of those songs. But I thought that was fine. Even the choreography was kind of hit and miss for me. It's one note. It's kind of a joke. Like, I did think the Sonny and Cher, like, acknowledging the audience was the best one by far of like that dialogue. And that was kind of aside from the musical performance. The other musical performances were just kind of average to me. I kind of forget most of them, to be honest.
Well, I don't think it's, I guess I don't feel like it's intended to be succeeding on the musical performances. I think the musical performances are used as a reflection of the mental state of the characters, first and foremost. So the fact that they're taking this class, there's these two wards in Arkham. One is kind of a prison and one is a mental institution. And Arthur is invited over into the mental institution side of things to take part in this music class. And they're showing clips, or they're showing old musical movies. It kind of, I felt, falls in line with the gaudiness of the Robert De Niro's talk show in the first one. And I felt Arthur, and it could be because there's not a lot of Joker in this, and when Joker is in it, it's usually in those fantasies outside of the courtroom scene. But I liked spending more time with Arthur as a character over Joker, because I'm not crazy about Joaquin Phoenix's Joker laugh and performance, and like looking at the dance on the stairway to Gary Glitter in the first one versus what this is doing. This is just so much more challenging and interesting. The first film is just really, it's interesting in that sort of like, here's a Joker movie that isn't a traditional Joker movie, and it's using the inspirations from 70s cinema and specifically Scorsese and so on and so forth. But I love the Manson-esque feel of this one, where Arthur becomes this cult hero and taking Harley Quinn and turning her into a Manson girl, basically. Where that goes with how it affects their relationship, I thought was also a lot stronger than simply Arthur realizing that in the first one, all of these interactions he had was a delusion. This one, I feel like, really challenges the character to take a stand on which side of the coin he is. Is he the Joker or Arthur? And the pressure, I thought, was convincing for him to lean one way or the other. And the idea of Arthur as a person being a disappointment, not only to the people in the courtroom and the fans outside, but the people watching the movie, I think is an interesting commentary on not just the idea of celebrity, and in particular celebrity amongst killers. I felt it was a strong case for what people actually want from these movies as well, which is fair. I mean, it's a Joker movie, so a lot of people are going in hoping for that character, but this is not that character.
Yeah, that's true. But I am more on the side of Frank with this one. I do think, for me, actually, like, it was more like the first half hour or so, I was pretty on board. I was enjoying him at the prison, dealing with the guards, kind of just, and again, I really like Joaquin Phoenix's performance as both Joker and Arthur. I like both. But once that courtroom stuff started, I just completely, like, it just, the energy dropped. I just had no interest, and it felt like even the first musical number, when he's kind of watching the news report or whatever and starts singing, I like that moment in that song. But like, once the trial started, I found all the musical sequences pretty dull, and I feel like if you're going to commit to making this a musical, maybe this was an expectation thing for me, but I just thought they were going to go way more visually interesting and kind of, I don't know, like I get the songs, like the emotion and the tone kind of match more what's going on in the movie, but I was expecting more, I guess, from the musical sequences. The Sonny and Cher one was kind of cool, I guess, but then the end, I kind of came back a bit, and I know the end, we'll talk about in spoilers, a lot of people seem to really hate the ending. The very end, I am a little bit torn on. Like, I don't love it, but I think I like the movie is definitely, I think, in dialogue with people's feelings on the first film. Like, it's kind of reacting to the reaction to the first film, and kind of, as Jay's saying, like, I guess superhero movies in general or big budget studio movies. And it's playing with that. And there are some interesting things, but I also do think, I mean, I don't know if a lot of people are saying it's kind of like Todd Phillips' middle finger to audiences and stuff like that. And I can see why people would get that out of it. But, you know, like, there's still some interesting stuff in there.
I love the idea of a film that maybe challenges certain expectations of an audience is immediately considered a fuck you to the audience. Like, that's just such a dumb reaction.
Yeah, Sean.
Well, I'm not saying that was my reaction necessarily. I'm just saying, like, I get it. And like the whole Harley Quinn, like, I liked Lady Gaga, her performance, but I did not really think Harley Quinn as a character was that interesting. Like, it just kind of, again, like, it is kind of feeding into that idea of like serial killers or criminals as celebrities, but I don't know. She was more interesting at the beginning of the movie when you didn't really know much about her. And like, once you find out, it just, I don't know, there wasn't anything there, I didn't think. So that was kind of a disappointment. And I think maybe that's
by the end of the movie, that's, I think, somewhat intentional.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make, to me, it was more the experience of watching the movie wasn't that enjoyable. I'm fine with this movie existing, even if it was a fuck you to, I would kind of like that. I just thought the version of fuck you that it presented was pretty thin and stretched out. And the courtroom scene is the biggest example to me of, I'm like, that to me, you're building up to that. And the commentary, I think there is a bit of that with one of the witnesses. And that's what leans into a lot of the themes of, you know, this duality of Joker and Arthur. But that was pretty much it. The rest of it felt pretty pedestrian. And it's more the writing I had an issue with. If there was one flaw of the movie, it would be the writing to me, which I thought, you know, when I said it felt a little rushed, I think another year of tightening up the script would have been beneficial to the movie. I think it's not that memorable other than, you know, a few key moments, which are great. I'm sure people say, well, you can say that about a lot of movies, but I think for those movies, even the first Joker, there was a tension, mystery, and danger that carried, especially a first-time theatrical viewing. Like, there was a tension in the audience seeing the first one. This one was just like not registering with me personally. It just was an interesting exercise that didn't land, but I certainly didn't hate it or think, you know, it had zero value.
I should have opened my review by saying that this film is not ordinary, which is why I loved it. One thing is that it's an anti-romantic comedy because it hits all the beats of a romantic comedy, but I mean, this is spoiling things. It's just everything goes wrong. Everything goes the wrong way instead of the right way, which you would get in a normal Hollywood movie.
Well, I think there are elements in the ending of the romance that I liked. There's a couple facets to the ending that we'll talk about in spoiler. I liked all of the ending stuff as a concept. It was more the execution and one part in particular that it just kind of happens out of nowhere. And there's elements with another character that I thought could have been built up a bit more or better established earlier in the movie.
I love the Batman connection because I wish other franchises would do this sort of thing. Like I've always wanted Star Trek to do like a simple, just do a simple story, not no saving the universe type shit. Just like a captain and his ensign or something.
Like a Lower Decks movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing about Joker Folie à Deux is that there's like, is there any violence? The only thing I can remember is the slap to the back of the head. Am I spoiling by saying this stuff? But there's no violence and there's sex that's tastefully
There's
done.
violence in it.
Yeah. He
Oh,
gets beat
no,
up a bunch.
is there?
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not person on person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there? Okay. Well,
We'll talk about it in spoilers.
I got lost in the romance of the movie.
I thought it was successful in building empathy for the character of Arthur.
Oh yeah, big time.
There's one subtle moment. I mean, maybe it's not subtle, but that moment where you see how he's being treated by the guards and the other inmates, and when the guards are kind of making fun of him and telling the one inmate who hasn't been kissed that Arthur knows how to kiss, and like the dehumanization of the people in Arkham, and the fact that Arthur goes up and gives the guy a kiss, like like they don't get anything out of that. He just did the thing and then gets the cigarette, and I feel like a little moment like that built a lot of empathy for Arthur and the way and for the other prisoners as well. And not like that sort of complicated thing of, okay, these are all people who are in here for a reason. Arthur in the first film killed 6 people, I guess. But the dehumanization of especially the mentally ill, I think was as a form of commentary a lot more successful than the first film. Like it feels to me that the main goal of these movies is a study of someone with mental illness, and this movie, I think, captured that very, very well. I felt deeply for the character of Arthur.
Yeah, one of the main reasons I think I love the movie so much is that I think I am like Arthur Fleck. You know, the sequence where they mention the 4
listen to the VHS Beyond special.
the 4 aspects of Arthur's character they listen to the film. Like I fit all of them except one, which is debatable. The one that I would debate is that he doesn't have any feelings for others. But I think I do, but maybe I don't because I insulted Jay. Yeah, and I didn't realize it. So maybe I don't have feelings for others. The difference is that if you watch this film without watching the first Joker, you wouldn't know that he's a killer. Like you couldn't fathom that he would kill anybody. He's so nice in this film, I think.
I mean, maybe that's an advantage for you not having seen the first movie and like maybe knowing what he's capable of. Although the first movie, he's a sympathetic character as well, but I think it's a little more careful to like throw down a bunch of different possibilities of things that may have pushed him in this way. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You haven't seen the first movie, you still empathize with him and kind of were on board. So
I actually found some of his lines funny in the film. I couldn't tell you which lines. Not the jokes that he wrote in his diary, but just some of the things he said were just funny to me. I know they weren't meant to be funny.
I think they're meant to be. A lot of it's meant to be funny.
Okay, yeah, maybe it was meant to be funny. Okay, can you without spoiling, can you name something that made you laugh, Frank?
No.
Oh, okay.
And I find the first one. I find the first one pretty funny.
I laughed when he called the judge Your Majesty.
No, I didn't laugh at that.
In the courtroom scene, we'll get into specifics and spoilers, but there's a moment where he pulls a stool up and has a microphone, and where that ends up going, I found surprising and more interesting than if it went down a path that would be more similar to the first film.
Totally agree. Well, in television productions, people say that a series will go to a courtroom drama because they're so interesting and they don't cost very much to do. So I just find it that interesting that people don't find the courtroom drama in Joker Folie do that interesting. Although I agree, it doesn't really. I guess they don't really do anything special in the court. Besides,
I mean, there's one key aspect that I like, but even that, in spoiler, I was expecting a lot more when something happens in the courtroom, and it's still kind of forgettable after that. I saw it last Thursday. I was really excited to see it, and I feel like I've forgotten almost everything in the movie.
No, you said you only saw it last Thursday because you didn't know if you'd have time on the weekend.
That too. That was also part of the reason. And I was excited to see it, but
he was on a Batman kick. He was revisiting all the Batman stuff.
But I usually prefer to see it closer to when we're going to talk about it. But I remember so little, especially regarding like Lady Gaga's character. I don't remember much about what happens with her or some of the courtroom elements with her. I do like the costuming and production design across the board. I love in the movie. And there is a shot, it's featured on some of the posters at the end of the movie where I think he's kind of like, they film it where the shadows almost look grotesque on his face. Do you know what I'm talking about? That shot?
Yeah.
I love that shot. Like, I thought that was incredible. And there are other small things. There
was a shot that made it look like he had white makeup on. It was just the lighting that made it look like that.
I love that. But other than that, it feels as kind of a musical to me. And I think the movie is attempting to be a musical of sorts. And I guess I just expect more of the musical numbers than just being his fantasies or delusions. I want to be entertained by those musical numbers, and I can see how someone would be. I just personally wasn't.
No, I like it that they didn't go overblown with musical numbers. That's what makes it not ordinary.
I mean, the musical numbers, you have to look at what purpose they serve generally in musicals. And I mean, it is the song, the quality of the song and the lyrics and everything. And, but in this movie, the purpose, I don't think, is squarely to have memorable songs in memorable musical numbers. I feel like it's, if anything, more of a tonal contrast that is supposed to suggest a sort of schizophrenia tonally in the film. You know, going from moments of utter despair to a musical number. I just don't. I don't feel like that the point of that is solely to have a musical number that you can sing along to. And
I agree with what you're saying. The problem is the concept exists when you go from whatever despair to the musical number. That switch happens in that moment. So the commentary's there. It's an interesting juxtaposition, but then you're still stuck, observing or trying to buy into the musical number itself for upwards of 5 minutes, 6 minutes. And I just felt myself not really engaged with that. I like the idea, the commentary, but as they're happening, I'm like, I was kind of waiting for them to end for the most part.
I find it creepy when people break into song.
And I generally like musicals. It's not like a musical thing. I thought that was an interesting choice for the movie, and I was excited to see what they did with it. It just, I didn't feel like they crushed the execution of some of that stuff. And I do think the Gary Glitter on the stairs is a more, like, it was more interesting to me than some of the musical numbers in this. And I know Jay would disagree.
It's easy.
More ordinary.
I don't think it's ordinary.
Gary Glitter.
That was a controversial choice.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Gary Glitter is a pedophile, so they used a song of a pedophile, and whatever the money went to, whoever it went to. But I mean, as a song, it's just like the most generic piece of music. And it's not baked into the film in a way where that is any sort of commentary. It's just like
sure it is.
Style.
That song is associated mostly with sports. It was the idea of like the controversy surrounding the film. It was like glorifying violence or turning it into a sport or entertainment, which is a theme that carries forward into the second movie. I think that's what that's about. Like, it's not, I don't think it's easy or obvious. I was certainly surprised when it happened in the first movie, and I thought it was kind of an inspired choice.
I was not. We'll listen, Frank. We'll agree to disagree on this one,
Sure.
Okay? But I think it just falls into, okay, this is a song I like and it's recognizable, so it works. I like that these songs aren't songs that maybe people will recognize, and they're left to what is happening on the screen and how it interfaces with what's happening outside of the musical numbers. It's not just like an easy, here's a song you're all gonna love, and it's going to carry you through this in some way. I feel like the musical numbers are challenging in a way, and they certainly could have spent the time to. This movie had a sizable budget. They could have made these things massive. They could have hired people to fill in for Joaquin Phoenix's voice. But I think it's all in service of leading to a moment, which we'll get to in spoilers, on those stairs between him and Lady Gaga. And I thought that hit very powerfully as well. But I just don't get, I understand, Frank and Sean, your reaction to this. I don't understand the insane hatred towards this movie. Like, it just is.
I was going to kind of bring that up. Like, I hate sometimes reviewing the reactions to the movie, the other reactions to the movie. But like, I like, do you guys know? Like, is it that A, people didn't know it was a musical going in? Is it B, that it's a comic book movie and these two characters, people have very specific thoughts on how they should be portrayed and it didn't do that? Or is it something else? Like, I don't know where that crazy hatred seems to be coming from.
All those reasons and more, Sean.
I would say this is not, obviously it's a generalization, but it's also not intended to encompass the entirety of the people who hate this movie. But I think a lot of people just want to go in and see a Joker movie, which is fair enough. Like, they want to go in and see something that is connected to Batman. They want a plot that is related to Batman. They want to see things they recognize. And that's what they're a fan of. They're not necessarily a fan of movies or the history of movies or how movies change the way, we talk about them and the language within them. They're a fan of superhero movies or action movies or whatever.
Violence.
So when it falls outside of that, it's more of a to B comparison. Like, I was expecting this, but I got this. So this is not anything of value because it wasn't representative of this, even if it's doing something different and interesting. And musical numbers, even if they are the best musical numbers on the face of the earth, that's still a point of entry for a lot of people. That is like a non-starter. There are a lot of people that do not like musicals, no matter how good they are.
They did put it out there that it was going to be a musical, but I feel like the marketing was not really indicative of that from what I remember.
I mean, I've seen, every once in a while I watch on YouTube Electric Playground. It's still around and kicking, minus Tommy Tallarico, who is trying to get over that in television Amico shame. But what's his name? What's
Victor
the other guy?
Lucas?
Victor Lucas did a review of it.
I wanted it to end. I couldn't wait to get the hell out of the theater. I'm never, ever, ever going to see this piece of crap film again.
Is that reviewing the movie, or is that reviewing what you had hoped the movie would be, which is just a comic book movie? And I thought the whole point of this Joker stuff was to just use the comic book foundation as a jumping off point to do some different interesting things with the characterizations. But
I think there's a theme. I don't know why people hate it so much. I guess I wasn't aware of that. I just knew it didn't do well at the box office. But I think there is a general theme of the movie that I'm guessing people, to me, it's in contrast to the theme of the first movie, which was like elevating this character. And I think this movie ends in a different way that is in contrast to that theme that I think people also would dislike.
Yeah, because
which I did like it, by the way. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, well, what does this mean for the canon? What does this mean for, did we just waste our time?
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. I mean, we'll talk about it in spoilers. There's like going in, I knew the ending was, a lot of people hated it, and I thought for sure it was going to be something else. But yeah, I don't know. I mean,
oh yeah, I want to hear that. I want to hear what you expected, John.
Okay. But yeah, like even with the musicals, just real quick on the musical sequences, like I am torn because like I see kind of what Jay's saying. Like I like that these performances are very like low key, like not these big, like it's not about trying to have an amazing voice or trying to have an amazing song. It's just kind of these. Like I could see some people interpreting it as it's almost embarrassed to be a musical in some way, or that it's like not putting in the full effort, that it's lazy, but like it's clearly with intention. I wasn't entertained. So like,
yeah, like I can be entertained by low key songs in musicals. Like Not in Nottingham in Robin Hood, Disney's Robin Hood is like an absolute banger, and it's a depressing song. But it's very memorable and like an interesting musical number in its depressing attitude. And I just found most of the musical numbers pretty forgettable, aside from not the music aspects, but the commentary dialogue aspects of some of the Sonny and Cher like stuff. But I think the thing I'm talking about with the ending and the theme of the ending is not what Sean's referring to. I'm referring to like it's commentary on like celebrity, and especially celebrity of like aggressive movements, I guess.
Okay. Reed, what were you going to say?
One of the songs that's featured in the movie is a very popular MGM song that's been used quite frequently to glorify Hollywood. And the song is That's Entertainment. And this movie puts that song in a whole new meaning, gives it a dark undercurrent.
I agree.
See, that's the stuff that's kind of obvious to me. It's taking songs that are usually happy and then just kind of flipping it in the context of the movie. Like it's
not about the song though. It's about the entertainment within the courtroom, the entertainment from like being interviewed. That is when you start looking at the analog to this, which is the Manson murders, the way that the Manson girls drew attention to themselves and wore shaved their heads and carved things into their foreheads to be aligned with Charles Manson, creating and giving power to this myth, this killer. And then this movie asks the question, well, what if that killer is actively trying to shed that element of their personality and can't, but everybody surrounding them is pushing them towards that personality. And I think it captures that brilliantly.
I get that. I guess the Manson comparison, you've done a lot of research on that. Like, I did not make that connection at all when I was watching the movie. It was, I was looking at it much more through the lens of like the character of Joker from the first one. And I'm not saying it's not there. It was lost on me.
Even like I said, Natural Born Killers, you think of like Steve Coogan's character feels very similar to Robert Downey Jr.'s character in Natural Born Killers when he's doing the interview with Mickey in the jail. And, you know, especially now with so much interest in regards to true crime and, you know, people still idolizing killers in jail. I mean, listen, Chris Watts, this guy gets letters from people throwing themselves at him. You know, they think he's hot shit. It's an interesting, weird thing. And I don't think the film is solely interested in interrogating that, but it is certainly part of the conversation. And then it expands out beyond the film into, well, what are we looking for in this movie? You know, what are we not being entertained by? This is a story about a character that is a killer with a mental illness. Should he be like planning a big bank heist? We have that. Yeah. We have that in the other Batman movies.
No, but I think in this movie, the equivalent of a bank heist is the courtroom sequence, which just kind of fell flat for me personally.
I don't see it as an equivalent of a bank heist. I see it as a character, a desperate character who's like being torn back and forth between the expectations of his caseworkers, between the Harley Quinn and the way she's manipulating him, and the expectation of the news media and the audience outside of the courtroom, and what he represents. He suddenly has lost agency, and even the more confident side of him, the Joker side of him, because everyone has taken that look and turned it into their own message. And I think the way that they kind of show that with that courtroom scene after what happens, I really like that as well. If anything, I would say it did feel like there was maybe two endings, but yeah, I don't know. It really worked for me.
Just wanted to mention that that Red Rooms movie that I watched a while back kind of does deal with similar things. I was kind of thinking about that a lot during the courtroom scene. So, I mean, if that sort of dissection of criminal as celebrity and all that stuff is something of interest to you, you might want to check that out. But, Reed?
Okay.
So the film, this Joker film, cost $200 million to make, and there have been some complaints that it doesn't look like that on the screen. And yeah, I would not have guessed it cost $200 million to make, but I don't hold that against the movie.
Well, I would guess 30 million is Joaquin Phoenix at least. I would guess
really
20 is Lady Gaga, 10 is Todd Phillips, and I would think the cinematographer probably got $2 million, and composer probably $1 million or $2 million.
You should be a line producer.
I'd be curious to know how close I am to some of those numbers.
I'm pretty sure. I think I saw Joaquin got 20 and Lady Gaga got 15. I think. I don't know about Todd Phillips or anyone else, but.
Okay, so I feel like we got to get into spoilers here. Any other non-spoiler stuff you guys want to mention?
Their process for the musical, I read something interesting that rather than having them sing to a backing tape, they had a pianist on set in a soundproofed room, I guess, that was being fed, I assume being fed into an earpiece or something with Joaquin and Lady Gaga, so that their singing is dictating the tempo rather than the backing track dictating the tempo of their singing. So the way they sang would affect the songs as they are played, which I thought was an interesting way to make it feel more organic and less locked into the traditional like musical rhythm.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. I love
Are you
it.
second guessing your enjoyment of the film, Jay? Reed's telling you it's beautiful.
All right. Let's get some star ratings out. What are you guys going to give this out of 5 stars?
It'd be too easy for me to give it a 6. Not that guest stars are allowed to give 6s, but I'm going to give it a 5.
Okay.
I wouldn't give it a 6, and 5, it maybe feels a little like trolling or something, but I truly don't get the hatred around this movie, and I don't care, that it's, I mean, it sucks, I guess, that it's not resonating, and I'm sure they wanted it to, but I'm sure there's also a little element of Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix especially being a little playful with the audience. So I'll give it a 5, but
Yeah.
I also want to mention just briefly the opening animation. Frankie had said you didn't think it connected to anything. I thought it connected pretty well. Like it's the animation is about him in his shadow and like two forces kind of pulling at each other. I thought it set it up quite well.
The inventiveness of the animation was kind of disappointing to me. It felt a little generic.
But it's supposed to, isn't it? Like it's supposed to represent an old Looney Tunes cartoon.
Well, I think there's lots of inventiveness and like clever ideas in old Looney Tunes animation. I just thought this, again, it was the concept was interesting. The execution was kind of underwhelming to me of the animated sequence.
What did Dax think of the animation? I thought the animation itself was really well done, like the walking and.
I can't remember what he said, to be honest. I know he said for the movie didn't hate wasn't great, but I'm not sure. I can't believe we didn't talk about that after. Maybe Sean?
I'm giving it a 3, which I'm a little bit like I could go lower, honestly, but yeah, it's a 3. Frank?
I'm a 3. But I am excited to watch it in 4K.
Yeah. It's always better in 4K.
And this is a movie where now that I know what it is, like with a little less expectation, I'm curious to rewatch it.
Yeah, for sure.
Was it a different aspect ratio than the first one?
I don't think so.
Okay. I thought it might be.
You're supposed to know these things, Frank.
Well, it's tough to say when there's no masking at the movie theater on the screen. And
True. Okay, stick around for some spoilers at the end of the show.
I'm the Joker, baby.
Let's get into spoilers for Joker Folie à Deux.
I just want to say that get in here that I think this film could still fit in with canon. I mean, there's nothing about canon that says there's only one Joker.
Well,
and his name is Arthur Fleck. I didn't realize that it's only in the comic books in 2022 that they actually came up with the name of the Joker is Jack Oswald
Cobblepot.
White. Yeah, White. Jack Oswald White.
Well, I mean, it could fit in canon because it's suggesting that you see the birth of the real Joker at the end.
How do you know that's the real Joker?
Well, I think it's suggested. He stabs Arthur, starts laughing maniacally, and you see him in the background cut his mouth.
I read somewhere that Christopher Nolan had a patent on that Joker carving his mouth.
He stopped it from the first film, but Christopher Nolan is not involved with this one.
Oh,
Yeah, he didn't want a different Joker also cutting a smile into his face. But now they can do whatever the hell they want. So,
See, I thought, I like the idea of the ending of someone who followed him or idolized him, killing him. I just thought that other character, they show up pretty haphazardly through the rest of the movie. And I didn't think the performance from that actor was all that good. And it just it felt a little unearned to me, that ending, specifically for that character, not thematically, but that character's motivation and how it felt so arbitrary, and you knew something was going to happen because they would cut to that character for seemingly like unimportant reasons. And I'm like, what? There's way too much focus on this other character. And it didn't feel natural. It felt really calculated when they would show that character. I feel if that character was integrated more into the plot, I would have appreciated it more.
See, I disagree because I feel like the randomness, like I don't disagree that you get, these people are established throughout the film in a way, but the idea of this symbol, this guy being shanked in a hallway by someone else feels like an appropriately banal end to that character. The fact that the person who does it is potentially suggested to be the real Joker is just like, I don't think that's the main.
Yeah. I feel like that was even kind of teased in the first one, where it was like this Arthur Fleck was like kind of the legacy, like created the legacy of the Heath Ledger Joker and stuff like that. So I didn't really notice the cutting of the mouth, to be honest. I don't know why, but I thought I didn't think it was direct. He directly cut his mouth. So I'm kind of sweating that I forgot that, or didn't notice it. I think I would have liked it more if it was purely random. Do you know what I mean? It's the fact that I saw flashes of this other person that was like, so like, look at this guy. This is important for some inexplicable reason, that I think I would have liked it more if a random person just stabbed him that was mad at him, rather than someone you've been teased about their importance in kind of a clumsy way for the rest of the movie. I don't disagree that a randomness is interesting. And that's where I thought part of the backlash for this movie was, that's not why I like the first movie, but the idea of like this kind of misfit character becoming a hero to the forgotten and the neglected was a theme in the first movie. And this movie seems to be undoing that a bit by saying, yeah, like, look what happens when people follow that and create movements based on someone who could be dangerous, and like him regretting doing it himself. Like, I find that interesting, but I feel like that's what part of the backlash is about, like the Joker having his own regrets. And where that thematically is a little confusing for me is it feels like the opportunity for the movie to say something or turn like into like climax mode is when he says, I'm going to defend myself. Like, that to me is, okay, this movie is about to earn everything it set up. And I didn't think it really earned it in that moment. I thought like him being the Joker again, as Jay says, kind of reluctantly, wasn't that great of a payoff for me. It just felt kind of like disposable dialogue and ideas, other than a bit of the testimony from his friend.
I mean, I thought that the testimony from the friend was really effective, and that's the thing that pulls him back to being Arthur. But the payoff, it isn't. It's like a small payoff, but meaningful one, of him pulling up that stool with a microphone and the judge warning him that it's not a comedy club, and him just giving a sincere he kind of goes back on everything that he was doing up until that point and gives a sincere confession, I guess, to the jury that is not necessarily in his best interest, but could be. I don't know, but it's that change and then the disappointment of everybody when he, as Joker, goes back to Arthur. And I thought that was very effective.
I did love the fact that as soon as he kind of gets rid of Joker, that Harley is done with him and is kind of taken the movement on herself, or she was not really in love with him as a person, but was in love with the idea of fame or the character Joker. I thought that was really effective. It was more the second ending I wasn't as crazy about, because I kind of think she should have killed him, to be honest. I think it would have been a more it feels like that other thing is there just to connect it to Heath Ledger's Joker.
I see what you're saying, but I feel like that would be too operatic. Like it. I feel like him just being shanked in the hallway that's the way to go.
I agree. I just prefer it if it was a random person.
But it is. I mean, it's just because you can make this connection. I don't think we ever hear the person's name, but the suggestion that this is that the new Joker? Is that the actual Joker? Is completely pulled in from outside of the film. Like it is just pulled in from what we know about.
Yeah, my criticism is more the look of that character and how they're treated previously in the movie. That I agree to Arthur. It is kind of a random person. So thematically, that kind of makes sense. It's how the film treats that character I was not crazy about.
Frank, did I miss whether you explained if you expected Arthur Fleck to die at the end?
I did not expect that. But I also simultaneously wasn't surprised. And I feel like Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips would be like, yeah, we're done with this. We're kind of ending this in a big way.
So let me say a couple of things that were going through my head before I saw the movie, right? Like, so I was thinking, okay, everybody hates this ending. What could be the thing everybody hates? And the first thing I thought is, well, it's in like a mental asylum or whatever, like the whole thing's a dream or the whole thing's in his head. It seems like the obvious thing that would piss everybody off. They don't really go there, although I guess there are some moments that you're not quite sure if it's real or not. Like when Harley appears to him in his prison cell. I'm still like, was that real? I don't really know.
I'm pretty certain that's not real.
But why? You don't think
because they wouldn't let her into solitary confinement with him with makeup to have sex.
Pretty unlikely.
I mean, I wonder if, maybe a lot of people are upset because a superhero movie, quote unquote, had sex in it. Whether their precious Joker character is having on-screen sex with their precious Harley Quinn.
Hold on a sec. Then when she tells him during the visit that she's pregnant, she has no idea that he's had this fantasy, right?
I mean, they might have had sex in some other way, but I feel like I don't buy that that's happening in his cell.
Yeah, I think a bunch of people speculate that, kind of like the first movie, Harley Quinn is completely a figment of his imagination in this movie.
Yeah, could be. Although, like, the news, I think, do report on her and stuff. So it's like...
Yeah, I haven't put that to the test and, like, watched the movie again, but...
I feel like he, at least at first, just feels like his muse, And then you start to realize that she has her own sort of manipulative tendencies. But and Sean, I know you were in the middle of saying something, but you're just gonna have to fucking wait, dude. I just want to mention the musical stuff leading up to him and Harley Quinn on the stairs at the end. I thought it was really effective when she keeps singing and he's like asking her to stop singing. It's like he's finally shifted out of the fantasy and wants to be Arthur and has this partner and wants to kind of live this life and is begging her to stop singing and come back to reality, and she refuses, and she wants Joker, which is, again, a great analogous sort of representation of the audience.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, Sean.
Okay, Sean, you go.
Well, just the other thing I was thinking that might happen was that he was going to kill himself. Just, there's a lot of the imagery of like shooting yourself in the head in the movie. I was like, okay, they're just going to have him blow his brains out at the end, which seems like, just this stupid ending that everyone would hate. But killing him off, and I think the way they do it actually, for the most part, works. Like, I think I agree with Jay that it did feel random enough to me. And that's where you kind of feel a little bit again that this is their reaction to the reaction of the first movie, maybe, of like, okay, we're just going to kill this character because people are buying into this guy way too much. And but again, it does, as Reed said, it kind of works it in the canon, and it leaves it open that they could do more Jokers. We've seen other people at the trial and stuff putting on the face paint and like wanting to be like Joker. So there's a whole city of people that want to continue the legacy. So like that, they could have multiple Jokers after this. It doesn't necessarily have to be, this is the one that killed him is the Joker, or, supposed to be the Heath Ledger Joker or anything like that. It's just one of many potentially.
In terms of comic book movie stuff, I think it does align kind of nicely with Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy and how it ends with like Joseph Gordon-Levitt kind of presumably taking on the role of Batman, and Batman being an idea rather than a person, and like the idea of Joker not being a person, which like the deep personification of Arthur Fleck actually adds to that theme. Like he became something he didn't even want to be, and that's like Batman wants that to be the legacy of Batman. He doesn't even want that to be his legacy by the end of the movie, and it's out of his power. He's like unwillingly created it to some degree.
I also think it's important that he's killed when he's Arthur and not Joker. Like it kind of suggests that the second he lets go of Joker, someone else will step in and take that place, and he's just Arthur, I thought that stuff was pretty effective, but I feel like the thing, I could be wrong, but I'm guessing part of the reason, outside of the musical stuff and everything else, stylistically, that people might be upset is because they get to the end and they say to themselves, so those two fucking movies weren't even about the Joker?
Yeah. And I mean, I think also just, again, like if people are enjoying that character, and then, like you said, he just kind of gets shanked and like unceremoniously killed at the end. Like that does feel like a fuck you in some way if you really like that character. So I get that, but like it is also appropriate to what the movie's about. So
one thing I just remembered in the movie, there's an aspect of medication as well, too, I think, right? Like, because it starts with him taking medication, and is there a moment in the movie where it's obvious that he stops taking it?
He says he stopped.
Okay.
So Harley.
I remember that being, and that's when Joker kind of comes back, right?
Yeah, she says you should stop taking your medication, and he says I already have.
Okay. Because at the beginning of the movie, while he's on the medication, he's pretty much like a version of Arthur again.
Yeah. Or like a really out of it version of Arthur. And then when he comes out of his shell is when he's offered this opportunity to be a part of this music class and meet Harley Quinn Lee. So it feels like his intentions there are not to go back to being Joker, but to connect with someone in a way. And then the relitigation of his trial in combination with her manipulation and the public pressure puts him back into the the makeup.
But I thought that version, like Joker in those moments when the makeup's back, he still doesn't feel like the same version of Joker. Like he's
trying to actively trying to be the Joker. And it feels like he's not, like he's talking in a Southern lawyer accent and he's playing it up, but the facade is very easily shattered when Mr. Puddles comes up and gives his witness testimony.
I just thought that trial opportunity, he is on trial for murdering, 5 people that they know of. And I thought, you could kind of get both in that trial because we've already seen the Arthur side of things. I kind of wanted to see Joker rationalize or discuss why he murdered those people, which is in the first movie to some degree, but in particular, like it talks about it briefly, but killing his own mother seems like something that I thought this movie was going to address more. And that felt like when he becomes Joker again, it felt a little toothless to me. And I think the movie does take a lot of big swings, and I expected it to swing a lot bigger when he becomes Joker, even if it is just momentary.
I feel like that representation of Joker is in the musical numbers. I like the fact that Joker, I believe, up until the end, the courtroom stuff, is only present in the fantasies.
Going to the romantic comedy aspect that I brought up before, I thought it was brilliant writing that as a beat, in the romance comedies, you have a dilemma involved where someone does something wrong to the other. And the whole thing with Harley Quinn lying to him initially, and then we find out who's her background, which fits in with the Harley Quinn canon that we know from Batman. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess it fits in terms of that she's
wow,
psychology,
psychiatrist.
But like, I don't know, the idea, it doesn't really fit in with the Harley Quinn we know in terms of her character being obsessed with Joker and trying to manipulate him. I mean, I guess like
this is her origin story.
The whole thing is she starts putting Joker makeup on. She leaves him because he's rejected Joker.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I guess I just, in my head, Harley Quinn is a more has more of her own personality. Like, yes, she loves Joker and is influenced by him, but is not like trying to manipulate him. I don't know. I guess you got a point. I don't know. Something about it doesn't feel like that's something where I would think if you're a Harley Quinn fan, you would be like, "This is not my Harley Quinn." But
then watch fucking Birds of Prey, watch Suicide Squad, watch the cartoon, read the comics. I mean, Jesus Christ, dude.
Hey, do we know who set the courtroom explosion?
No. I was going to bring that up because this was another thing that was going through my head. Like when that explosion happened, so I hadn't rewatched Joker, and I was thinking to myself, is this going to like merge now with the Batman? Because there's like a car bomb or something in that movie, right? Towards the end. I don't totally remember what happens, but there's an explosion that goes off in the Batman, and I'm thinking that's
explosion in Batman explosion.
Well, just because like it seemed like this thing that they said they never would do, and I was like, oh my god, they're actually gonna have Joker come out into the world and be in the next Batman sequel or something. But the time doesn't line up. Like it's 2 decades before or something, right? So it doesn't make any sense. But
it's also just not a part of that.
Right,
series.
Exactly. But I just thought maybe that was the twist that maybe people hated, was that they actually did that. But now that I think about it, people would probably love that. So it doesn't really make sense.
I mean, I really liked that whole, him leaving the courtroom and the sort of single take thing of him running and getting into that car and then everyone, banging on the windows and driving, then him leaving the car, and like it kind of gave me like Beau is Afraid vibes, like just sort of manic, anxious, him not wanting to be necessarily associated with the people who sprung him. And the only good reason for him to be leaving is to connect with Lee and have some sort of normal life, I guess, as normal as it could be, but he doesn't get that.
So who set the courtroom explosion? Frank.
I think it's just one of the groups of followers that have been watching the case the whole time.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Hey, I gotta go feed my dad now. I'll be back because I've seen the guys so slowly. Hey, for the listeners out there, my dad's not an invalid or anything. He's just he likes having me as his servant. He's a Chinese manservant. I'll be back.
What was I gonna say related to that? The bomb. I'm trying to remember. Do they show like that? They show Harvey Dent become Two-Face from that too, right?
There's a bit of a hint of it. It's pretty light.
Yeah. Because that's, again, like I'm thinking they're bringing everything together for some reason, but obviously they're not.
But that's why it can't be Heath Ledger's Joker, because there's a Harvey Dent in that movie, and there would be two Harvey Dents.
It would have to be like kind of what they did with X-Men when they kind of went back and retread the stories and changed things a bit, but
that has actual time travel though.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think it can be Heath Ledger's Joker. It's just kind of a nod.
Yeah.
I mean, it's its own thing. And it's also not like, I really liked it, partly maybe because I had very low expectations, but it's also not like the savior of cinema. It just was different enough, and Joaquin Phoenix's performance was like on a level, I think, beyond his performance in the first one, and I found it a lot more effective than I had expected. It kind of reminded me of, did we ever talk about, I don't know if you guys have seen Ticket Folies, the Wiseman documentary about the mental institution, but it starts with the employees doing a musical number. And the contrast of that, someone doing this musical number with, people having to be fed through feeding tubes and people in their cells hitting their heads against the wall and having manic episodes. It got that same contrast in this worked for me.
Yeah, I could see that potentially being something they're maybe paying homage to a little bit.
And I think there was a small Stern reference.
Oh, yeah?
There was. I forget what it was, though.
It's when Steve Coogan, I think it was Steve Coogan, says it's not funny.
It's not fun. It's not funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I wish I don't have that much more to say about the movie. I kind of wish I liked it more.
Maybe the 4K bump will...
It might happen.
Open up some...
Force feed nominee for sure.
Well, Victor Lucas says he's never going to watch this piece of shit again.
He's retiring it.
Yeah.
All right. Is that it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for listening.